While I was on the operating table, my daughter signed papers to move me into a nursing home. I found out after I woke up. My mouth was dry. My hip felt like fire, and the hospital wristband was cutting into my skin. A nurse stood beside my bed holding a form I had never seen before. "Mr. Gonzalez," she asked gently, "did you consent to long-term placement?" I tried to sit up. Pain shot through me so hard the monitor started beeping. Then I heard my daughter in the hallway. "He won't need his house now." A few minutes later, my granddaughter called. Her voice was shaking. "Grandpa, they're emptying your room." I could not walk. I could barely lift my hand. But I reached for the silver pen my late wife kept in my hospital bag. Because the morning before surgery, I had signed something my daughter did not know about. "Welcome to Final Act Revenge. Tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is where you are. Please take care of your health while you listen." Because that nursing home form was not the first paper signed that day. My name is Ali Gonzalez. I am 76 years old, Spanish-American, born in New Mexico, and I have lived most of my adult life in Spokane, Washington. For more than 30 years, I worked as a facilities supervisor at a community college. That is a plain job title, but plain jobs keep the world standing. I checked boiler rooms before winter. I replaced hallway lights before night classes started. I made sure handrails were tight, classroom doors locked properly, and no student tripped over a loose tile because somebody higher up forgot that safety begins close to the floor. I carried a little notebook in my shirt pocket for most of my career. Dates, times, work orders, names, who called, who signed, who said something had been fixed when it had only been hidden behind fresh paint. My wife Isabel used to tease me about it. "Ali," she would say, "you can turn changing a light bulb into a government inspection." Then she would smile and hand me coffee. She was right. But that notebook saved me more than once. People forget what they promised. Paper does not. Isabel understood that even better than I did. She worked as a bilingual reading tutor at the community library, helping older folks, immigrants, and working families read documents that made them nervous. Hospital discharge papers, insurance letters, power of attorney forms, nursing facility brochures, Medicare notices written in language no normal person would use at a kitchen table. She believed paperwork could either protect a person or quietly steal their voice. At the library, she held a small class called "Your Signature Still Belongs to You." Not fancy, just folding chairs, coffee and paper cups, and Isabel at the front with her silver pen, underlining sentences people should not ignore. She had one rule, she said over and over: pain medicine should never become someone else's signature. I heard that sentence so many times I used to finish it for her. She would point the pen at me and "Good, then remember it when you are the one in the hospital bed." I would laugh. I should have listened harder. When Isabel passed in 2023, the house became too quiet. Her reading chair stayed by the window. Her books stayed on the shelf. Her silver pen stayed in the top drawer of my nightstand, next to a folder she had labeled "Do not sign when medicated." That was Isabel. Even death could not stop her from organizing my common sense. My daughter Brenda started coming by more after that. At first I was grateful. She brought soup. She filled my pill organizer. She checked the fridge and told me I was eating too much toast and not enough vegetables. Brenda worked as a medical billing coordinator, so she knew the language of clinics and forms. She knew which numbers to call and which words made hospital staff take a family member seriously. I loved her for helping. I truly did. But over time, helping began to feel like measuring. She asked where I kept the house key, then the safe box, then the insurance papers, then the medical directive. Then one afternoon, while folding towels in my laundry room, she asked, "Dad, what happens if you can't live alone anymore?" I told her, "Then we talk about it when that day comes." She did not like that answer. People who want control rarely like waiting for the day to arrive. Before my hip surgery, Brenda became more practical than tender. She used that word a lot. Practical. as if love were something soft people did when they did not understand bills. She said recovery would be hard. She said stairs were dangerous. She said I was stubborn. Some of that was true, but true pieces can still build a false picture. That is why I took Isabel's silver pen the morning before surgery and went to see Malcolm Voss, my estate attorney. I did not go there to punish Brenda. I went because Isabel had taught me that protection is not suspicion. It is love with a witness. And by the time I walked out of Malcolm's office, my daughter no longer had the power she thought she would use when I woke up. The day before my surgery, Brenda came to my house with 3 canvas bags and that tight little smile people wear when they have already made decisions for you. She said she was there to help. I wanted to believe that. A father wants to believe his daughter is still his daughter before she is anything else. She set a pill organizer on my kitchen table, lined up my prescriptions, and taped a recovery checklist to the refrigerator. Then she put a hospital bag by the door like I was a child going to summer camp instead of an old man about to have his hip replaced. "Dad," she said, "don't make that face." "What face?" "The face you make when you think everyone else is overreacting." I almost smiled. Brenda had known that face since she was 8 years old. Back then, she used to sit on the garage steps while I fixed broken cabinet hinges or cleaned leaves out of gutters, asking me questions until I forgot how tired I was. Isabel would bring lemonade and say, "That girl is going to run a courtroom or a hospital someday." She was half right. Brenda did not run a hospital, but she knew how to sound like she did. She worked in medical billing, and that gave her confidence around words that frightened ordinary people. Words like authorization, placement, coverage, discharge, eligibility. She placed a stack of brochures beside my mail. One of them had a smiling old man on the cover, sitting beside a window with a blanket over his knees. Pine Ridge Care Center. I touched the edge of the brochure. "What's this?" "Just an option," Brenda said quickly. "Short-term rehab, only if the doctor recommends it." I turned it over. A yellow sticky note was attached to the back. "Long-term review available." She saw me reading it and pulled the brochure gently from my hand. "Dad, don't start." "I haven't started anything. You live alone. You just don't like saying that part out loud." I looked around my kitchen. Isabel's blue mug still sat by the coffee maker. Her reading chair was visible through the living room doorway. The house was quiet, yes, but quiet is not the same as unsafe. "I manage," I said. Brenda sighed. "That's what worries me." A little later, Travis came in without knocking. My son-in-law had a way of entering rooms like he expected the room to adjust. He managed an appliance store on the north side of Spokane and spoke about everything as if life were an inventory problem. He looked at the hallway, the living room, the old photographs, the shelves Isabel had loved. Then he said, "A house sitting empty half the day is just money sitting there." Brenda's head snapped toward him. "Not now, Travis. Don't talk about my father's house like that. Not, this is his home. Just, not now." Those 2 words told me more than I wanted to know. Travis raised both hands like he had been misunderstood by everyone alive. "I'm being practical." There was that word again. Practical. The word people use when they want selfishness to sound mature. Maya stopped by that afternoon with soup in a plastic container and her CNA textbook under one arm. My granddaughter was 19, tired most days, and still kinder than the world deserved. She was studying at night and working when she could, learning how to care for people without making them feel small. She saw Brenda putting my insurance folder into one of her bags. "Mom," Maya said, "why are you taking Grandpa's papers?" Brenda did not even look up. "So the hospital doesn't lose anything." Maya's eyes moved to me. I gave her a small nod, but the truth was, I did not like it either. Then Cody came in from the living room holding Isabel's silver pen. "Grandpa, are you taking this to the hospital?" I took it from him carefully. "Yes." Brenda frowned. "Dad, you don't need to sign anything right before surgery. I slipped the pen into my shirt pocket. That is exactly when I need to know what I signed before. The room went quiet. Only for a second, but enough. Travis looked away first. Brenda busied herself with the checklist. Maya kept watching her mother. And Cody, being 12, sensed something was wrong, but did not yet know which adult had caused it. That night, after everyone left, I walked through the house slowly. I touched Isabel's chair, the kitchen counter, the framed picture of Brenda at her high school graduation, the hallway where Maya used to run barefoot during summer visits, the small bedroom Cody called Grandpa's airplane room because I kept his model planes on the dresser. A house remembers people differently than paperwork does. Paper records ownership. A house records living. Near midnight, I heard Brenda's voice outside on the porch. She had come back for her phone charger and was talking low, probably to Travis. "If the doctor says he can't go home," she said, "everything gets easier." I stood behind the kitchen wall and did not move. Everything gets easier. Not he gets safer. Not Dad gets help. Everything. I lay in bed that night with Isabel's silver pen on my nightstand, wondering why my daughter sounded less afraid of losing me than afraid of me coming home. When I woke up after surgery, the first thing I noticed was not pain. It was sound. The steady beep of a monitor. The soft roll of wheels somewhere beyond the curtain. A nurse's shoes moving across the floor with that careful rhythm nurses have when they are trying not to scare people who wake up confused. Then the pain arrived. Deep in my hip, hot and heavy. Like somebody had bolted fire into my bones and told the rest of my body to stay polite about it. I opened my eyes slowly. The ceiling tiles looked too white. My mouth was dry. My throat felt scratched, probably from the tube they had used during surgery. I tried to move my leg and immediately regretted it. A hand touched my shoulder. "Easy, Mr. Gonzalez." The nurse leaned into view. Jocelyn Price. I read her badge because old habits survive anesthesia. Name first, role second, situation third. That was how I had spent 30 years handling problems in college buildings. Know who is in the room. Know what they are there to do. Jocelyn had kind eyes, but not soft eyes. There is a difference. Soft eyes comfort you. Kind eyes still notice things. "Can you tell me your full name?" she asked. "Ali Gonzalez." "Do you know where you are?" "Hospital, Spokane." "Do you know what surgery you had?" "Hip replacement." "Do you know what year it is?" I blinked once. "Still 2026, unless the anesthesia was stronger than promised." Her mouth twitched like she wanted to smile. "I've seen men lie about pain levels," she said. "You, Mr. Gonzalez, lie badly." That made me breathe out a small laugh. It hurt, but it helped too. Jocelyn wrote something on the chart beside my bed. I watched her pen move. That gave me comfort in a strange way. Isabel always said a careful note can protect a person when voices start arguing later. Then the curtain shifted. Brenda stepped in. My daughter looked tired, but put together. Hair clipped back, purse on her shoulder, phone in one hand, the same expression she used when arguing with insurance companies. "Dad," she said, leaning over me, "don't try to be tough." "I'm not trying," I whispered. "It's happening naturally." She did not laugh. That worried me. She glanced at Jocelyn. "He gets like this when he's trying to prove he's fine." Jocelyn remained polite. "He answered orientation questions appropriately." Brenda smiled too quickly. "That's good, but he can get confused under stress." There it was, a sentence shaped like concern, but pointed like a tool. I turned my head toward her. "Brenda." "Dad, please. We're just making sure you're safe." Behind her, a folder sat on the little rolling table near the wall. I could see the top sheet. Pine Ridge Care Center. I stared at those words until they sharpened. "What is that?" Brenda followed my eyes. "Just rehab information." "Rehab?" "Short term," she said. "Only until you're stronger." And Jocelyn picked up the packet. Her face changed slightly as she scanned the first page. Not enough for Brenda to notice, enough for me. "This section says long-term placement review," Jocelyn said. Brenda's mouth tightened. "That's standard wording." Jocelyn did not argue. Good nurses do not need to argue to become dangerous. They document. "Mr. Gonzalez," she said, turning back to me, "did you personally consent to long-term placement planning?" My chest tightened. I tried to sit up. Pain ripped through my hip so sharply the monitor began beeping faster. Jocelyn steadied my shoulder. "Slowly." Brenda stepped closer. "Dad, you agreed to let me help." That sentence landed harder than the pain. Help. People can hide an awful lot inside that word. I looked at my daughter's face. The same face I had kissed goodnight when she was little. The same eyes Isabel used to say looked like mine when they were stubborn. "I agreed to surgery," I said. "I agreed to recovery. I did not agree to Pine Ridge." Brenda's voice lowered. "You cannot live alone right now." "That is a care discussion," Jocelyn said calmly. "It is not the same as long-term consent." Brenda looked at her then, really looked, as if the nurse had stopped being furniture and become an obstacle. "My father is proud," Brenda said. "He'll say anything to go home." Jocelyn's pen moved again. I watched it. Patient, awake, oriented. Verbally denies consent to long-term placement. I did not know the exact words she wrote then. I learned later. But I saw enough to understand she was not just hearing Brenda. She was hearing me. That mattered. When you are old and lying in a hospital bed, people start speaking over you as if your body has become a conference table. Doctors talk. Family talks, insurance talks, facilities talk. And somewhere in all that talking, the person wearing the wristband can disappear. Jocelyn did not let me disappear. She placed the form where I could see it and asked again, clearly. "Mr. Gonzalez, do you consent to long-term placement at Pine Ridge Care Center?" Brenda's eyes warned me. Not begged, warned. I looked at the form, then at my daughter, then at the hospital wristband cutting lightly into my skin. "No," I said. One word, dry throat, weak voice. "Enough." The room became still. Brenda inhaled through her nose and looked toward the door like she needed a hallway before her anger showed. Jocelyn gathered the papers. "I'll note that placement discussions need further review." Brenda forced a smile. "Of course." But the smile did not reach any part of her face that used to belong to the girl I raised. A few minutes later, Jocelyn stepped out to update the chart. Brenda followed her into the hallway. The curtain did not close all the way. That small gap let me hear my daughter's voice. Low, fast, frightened. "He's more alert than they said. We need to move fast before Malcolm gets involved." Malcolm, my lawyer. I closed my eyes. That was the first time I heard my daughter say my lawyer's name like he was the problem, not the papers she had put in front of my hospital bed. By late afternoon, they moved me from recovery to a quieter room. The pain had settled into a deep, stubborn throb. Not sharp anymore. Worse in some ways. Sharp pain announces itself and leaves. This kind stayed. It sat in my hip like an unwanted guest, and reminded me, every time I breathed wrong, that my body was not fully mine that day. Jocelyn came in twice, once to check my vitals, once to move my phone closer to my hand. She did not make a big show of it. She simply placed it where I could reach it and said, "If you need to call someone, you should be able to call them." That sentence told me she understood more than she was allowed to say. I thanked her, she nodded, and checked the IV line. "I also added a note to your chart," she said. "You were awake, oriented, and requested direct involvement in discharge planning." I looked at her for a long moment. "Thank you for writing that down." Her face softened. Sometimes writing things down is how we keep people from being erased. I almost smiled. Isabel would have liked her. After Jocelyn left, the room grew quiet, except for the monitor and the soft murmur of nurses beyond the door. I stared at the ceiling. A hospital ceiling gives a man too much time to think. I thought about Brenda's voice in the hallway. We need to move fast before Malcolm gets involved. Move fast. That was not the language of care. That was the language of someone racing a door before it locked. My phone buzzed. Maya, I answered with shaking fingers. Grandpa? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Maya, sweetheart, where are you? At your house. My chest tightened. Why? Mom said she needed help organizing before you transition. That word again, transition. People use gentle words when the real ones would make them sound cruel. What is she organizing? Maya did not answer right away. Then I heard her breath hitch. Grandpa, they're emptying your room. For a second, I forgot the pain in my hip. What do you mean emptying? She sent the first photo. My closet door open, my shirts pulled from hangers and stuffed into black trash bags. Not folded, stuffed. The second photo showed my nightstand drawer pulled out. Isabel's old reading glasses were sitting on the bed beside a roll of packing tape. The third photo showed a cardboard box with thick black marker across the side. Clear before listing. I stared at that photo until the letters stopped looking like letters and became something heavier. Listing. Not rehab. Not recovery. Listing. A fourth photo came through. Isabel's reading chair had been moved from the window. That chair had not moved since she died. It sat in the morning light where she used to read library books with sticky notes tucked into the pages. Sometimes, after she passed, I would sit across from it with coffee and pretend silence was a conversation we had both agreed to continue. Now, it was pushed against the wall like old furniture waiting for pickup. I closed my eyes. Maya, I said carefully. Who moved the chair? Travis. Of course. I could picture him doing it with both hands, practical and careless, telling himself furniture did not have feelings. Then Maya sent one more photo. Cody was standing near the dresser, holding Isabel's silver pen in both hands. His face looked red, like he had been crying. Maya whispered, Mom put it in the donate box. Cody took it out. Something rose inside me then. Not weakness, not fear, anger. Clean anger. The kind that does not need shouting to know its own name. I gripped the side rail of the hospital bed and pushed myself up too fast. Pain tore through my hip. The monitor began beeping louder. A nurse outside called, Mr. Gonzalez? I forced myself to breathe. Brenda walked in just as the beeping slowed. She had her purse over one shoulder and that tired, controlled look people wear when they want you to confuse guilt with responsibility. Dad, what are you doing? I held up the phone. My room is not a waiting room for your inheritance. Her face went pale, only for a second. Then she recovered. Don't make this dramatic. I almost laughed. I was in a hospital bed with a cut hip, a nursing home form I had never signed, and photos of my dead wife's chair being moved while my grandson rescued her pen from a donate box. But I was the dramatic one. We are preparing for possibilities, Brenda said. Who wrote clear before listing? Her lips tightened. That was Travis being careless with labels. Careless is misspelling a name on a Christmas card. Dad, listing is not careless. She looked toward the hallway, then lowered her voice. You do not understand how hard this is. That stopped me. Because I believed her, I did. I believed caring for an aging parent is hard. I believed surgery is frightening. I believed bills, work, adult children, insurance calls, and fear can make a person feel cornered. But difficulty does not give you ownership over another person's life. Before I tell you what was inside the legal folder, let me ask you something. If you woke up from surgery and found out your own daughter had signed placement papers for a nursing home, then your granddaughter called to say they were emptying your room. Would you stay quiet to keep the family together? Or would you call the lawyer before they touched one more box? Tell me honestly what you would have done. Because lying in that hospital bed, I still wanted to protect Brenda from embarrassment. That is the sickness of parenthood sometimes. Even when your child hurts you, part of you still reaches to soften the fall. But then I looked again at Isabel's chair, at the box marked "Clear" before listing, at Cody holding that silver pen like he was rescuing a piece of his grandmother from a fire. I picked up my phone and called Malcolm Voss. Brenda stepped closer. "Dad, who are you calling?" I did not answer her. Malcolm picked up on the third ring. "Ali?" My voice was low, but it did not shake. "Malcolm, bring the blue folder." Brenda froze. There it was. Fear, not concern, not grief. Fear. She knew exactly what that folder meant, even if she did not know what was inside it. When I ended the call, she came closer to the bed and lowered her voice until it sounded almost kind. "Dad, if you fight me on this, I'll have to tell them you're not thinking clearly." The room went very quiet after that. Even the monitor seemed to pause between beats. I looked at my daughter, the child Isabel and I had raised, the woman now standing beside my hospital bed using concern like a weapon. And that was when I understood my daughter was no longer asking doctors to protect me. She was asking them to doubt me. The next morning, a woman named Paula Hensley came into my room with a clipboard pressed against her chest. She had the calm, careful face of someone who had walked into hundreds of family arguments and learned not to show fear. "Mr. Gonzalez," she said, "I'm Paula. I help with discharge planning." Discharge. That word should have sounded hopeful. Going home, leaving the hospital, returning to my own coffee pot, my own chair, my own front window where Isabel used to watch the first snow settle on the neighbor's fence. But by then, every hospital word felt like it had two meanings: care, transition, safety, placement. Soft words can still carry hard intentions. Paula pulled a chair beside my bed and sat where I could see her face. That mattered. People who stand over you in a hospital bed often forget how small the bed makes you feel. "I need to ask a few questions about your home setup," she said. Before I could answer, Brenda spoke from the corner of the room. "He lives alone." Paula turned toward her. "I understand. I'd like to hear from Mr. Gonzalez first." For the first time since I woke up, I saw my daughter's confidence flicker. Not break, just flicker. I answered slowly because pain made every sentence feel like it had to climb a hill. "My home is single-story except for 2 front steps. Bathroom has grab bars, hallway is clear, neighbor has a spare key. My bedroom is near the main bath." Paula wrote it down. Brenda folded her arms. "He forgets things." I looked at her. "I forgot where I put the TV remote last week. That is not a medical diagnosis." Paula's mouth almost moved, not a smile. Almost. Brenda did not appreciate it. "He's proud," she said. "That is the problem. He will say anything to avoid help." I felt that one. Not because it was entirely false. I was proud. Most old people are. Pride is sometimes the last coat you have left when everyone starts talking about your limitations like weather reports. But pride was not the same as confusion, and needing help was not the same as surrendering my voice. Paula checked the chart clipped to the end of my bed. I watched her eyes move across Jocelyn's note. Patient-oriented. Answers appropriately. Requests direct involvement in discharge decision. I could tell the exact moment Paula's thinking changed. Professionals rarely make dramatic faces. They pause. They ask different questions. "Mrs. Sutton," Paula said, "did your father specifically consent to Pine Ridge Care Center?" Brenda answered too fast. "He knew we were considering options." Paula looked down at the packet. "Short-term rehab options or long-term placement review?" The room shifted. There it was. The question nobody wanted to hold in open air. Brenda's hand tightened around her purse strap. "It's all part of planning." Paula turned one page. "This packet has long-term placement review selected." I closed my eyes for a second. Not because I was surprised, because hearing it from someone outside the family made it real in a different way. Brenda said, "Dad needs supervision." Paula looked at me. "Mr. Gonzalez, do you understand the difference between short-term rehabilitation and long-term placement?" "Yes. Can you explain it to me?" "Short-term rehab helps me recover so I can go home. Long-term placement assumes home is no longer the plan." Paula wrote that down too. Brenda's voice sharpened. "He's repeating what he heard from the nurse." "No," I said. "I'm repeating what my wife taught at the library for 15 years. That shut the room down for a moment. Isabel had a way of entering even after death when truth needed a witness. Paula continued reviewing the Pine Ridge packet. Her brow tightened at one page. "What are household transition notes?" I looked at Brenda. She looked away. Paula read silently, then turned the page toward me, just enough for me to see the heading. Household transition planning. Personal belongings. Care center suitcase. Medication transfer. Home environment disposition. Disposition. That was a word people used when they wanted to remove feeling from what was being done. "What household transition?" I asked. Brenda exhaled. "It's just wording, Dad." I had heard that excuse too many times already. Just wording. Just an option. Just rehab. Just safety. Funny how everything becomes just when someone does not want you looking closely. My phone buzzed on the table beside the bed. Maya again. I reached for it, but pain slowed me down. Paula noticed and handed it to me. Another photo. This one showed my living room. Travis stood near the front window with a man I did not recognize. The man held a folder and a measuring tape. Travis was pointing toward the wall where Isabel's framed library certificate used to hang. Maya's text came right after. "I think he's a realtor." I stared at the photo. For a second, my whole body felt colder than the hospital room. Brenda saw my face. "What is it?" I did not show her, not yet. Some evidence needs to reach the right hands before it reaches the person who will try to explain it away. I forwarded the photo to Malcolm. Then I placed the phone face down. Paula looked between us, and I could tell she understood more than she said. That is another thing good professionals learn. Not every truth should be spoken before it is secured. "I'm pausing final placement recommendations until authority and consent are clarified," Paula said. Brenda turned toward her sharply. "Do you know how hard it is to get a bed at a good facility?" There it was, a small sentence. But small sentences can reveal large assumptions. A bed, like I was a reservation, a slot, a problem to place somewhere. I looked at my daughter. "I'm not a reservation." Her face changed. Pain, anger, fear, all mixed together. "Dad, you are making this impossible." "No," I said quietly. "I'm making it honest." Paula stood, holding the clipboard against her side. "Mr. Gonzalez, no final decision will be made without further review. I will document that you requested direct participation and that long-term placement is disputed." I nodded. "Thank you." Brenda stared at the floor. When Paula left, the room filled with the kind of silence families use when nobody wants to be the first person to say the thing everyone now knows. Finally, Brenda spoke. "You don't understand what it's like." I looked at her. What is like?" "To be responsible for everything." That softened me against my will, because I did know Brenda had carried things. Medical bills, insurance calls, work pressure, her own family, her own debts, maybe. The terrible quiet panic of middle age in America, where everyone is one hospital bill, one repair, one missed paycheck away from falling behind. But responsibility does not give you permission to bury a living man under paperwork. "I know you're tired," I said. Her eyes filled immediately. I almost reached for her hand, almost. Then I remembered the box, clear before listing, and the hand stayed where it was. My phone buzzed again, a message from Malcolm Voss. "I'm on my way. Say nothing about the will until I arrive. I read it twice. Then I looked at Brenda standing beside my hospital bed, trying so hard to use authority she no longer had. For the first time, I saw the shape of the trap from above. The nursing home packet, the long-term review, the emptying bedroom, Travis with a stranger in my living room, Brenda's fear of Malcolm, and underneath it all, Isabel's silver pen waiting inside a blue folder my daughter had not seen. I placed the phone down carefully. Brenda wiped her eyes and said, "Dad, please don't make this harder." I looked at her with all the love I still had left, and all the trust she had already broken. "I'm not making it harder," I said. "I'm making sure I'm still the one who gets to answer." Malcolm Voss arrived just before evening. I knew it was him before I saw him because the hallway changed. Hospitals have a certain kind of movement. Nurses move fast, but gently. Doctors move with practiced focus. Family members move like they are trying to outrun fear. Lawyers move like paper has already told them where to stand. Malcolm stepped into my room wearing a dark coat, wire-frame glasses, and the same expression he had worn the morning before my surgery when I signed documents with Isabel's silver pen. He carried the blue folder. Brenda saw it and went still. Not completely, just enough. Her hand stopped moving on her purse strap. Her eyes dropped to the folder, then lifted to Malcolm's face. "Malcolm," she said, forcing a polite tone, "this really isn't necessary. We're just arranging care." Malcolm looked at her for one quiet second. "Care does not require secrecy." The room went silent. Even the air felt sharper after that. Travis had arrived some time after Paula left. He stood near the window with his arms folded, wearing the face of a man who believed every difficult conversation could be solved by sounding practical longer than everyone else. "Why is there a lawyer here?" he asked. "This is a medical issue." Malcolm placed the blue folder on the tray table beside my bed. "No, Mr. Sutton. This became a legal issue when documents were signed and property was moved without my client's informed consent." My client. 2 plain words. But they landed like a handrail bolted back into the wall. Brenda stepped closer. "He's my father." Malcolm nodded. "And he is my client." That was when I saw it happen. The room changed sides. Not against Brenda exactly, but around me. For the first time since I opened my eyes after surgery, I was not the patient everyone talked over. I was the person whose name was on the file. Jocelyn Price entered a moment later, followed by Paula Hensley. Jocelyn carried my chart. Paula carried the Pine Ridge packet. Brenda looked from one woman to the other. "You called them?" Malcolm did not look at her. "Mr. Gonzalez requested a review of authority, consent, and discharge planning." Travis muttered, "This is insane." I turned my head toward him. "No, Travis. Insane is packing a man's bedroom while his hip is still stapled shut." He looked away first. Good. Malcolm opened the folder. Inside were the documents I had signed the morning before surgery. I remembered that morning clearly now. Isabel's silver pen between my fingers, Malcolm's conference room smelling faintly like coffee and old books. My hand steady, not because I was fearless, but because Isabel's voice had been louder than my fear. Pain medicine should never become someone else's signature. Malcolm pulled out the first page. Ali Gonzalez updated his will prior to surgery. Brenda's mouth opened slightly. "You changed the will?" Her voice cracked on the word will, and that told me something I wish I did not have to know. She had been waiting for that document to matter. Malcolm did not answer the emotion. He answered the facts. He changed more than the will. He turned the next page. Prior medical power of attorney naming Brenda Sutton as healthcare decision-maker was revoked. Brenda took one step back. "No." "Yes," Malcolm said calmly. "That doesn't make sense. Dad never told me. I was not required to notify you before my client changed who could speak for him." My daughter looked at me then, not angry at first, hurt, as if I had betrayed her by protecting myself from what she was doing. "Dad," she whispered. I hated that it still worked on me. That one word. Dad. It reached past the hospital bed, past the forms, past the room being packed, all the way back to a little girl with a scraped knee asking me to carry her inside. But memory is not permission. I kept my voice low. "You signed papers while I was under anesthesia, Brenda. They told me someone had to plan." "No," Jocelyn said quietly. Everyone turned toward her. She held the chart against her chest. "Planning is appropriate. Representing disputed long-term placement as settled consent is not." Brenda stared at her. Jocelyn did not blink. She knew what she was writing down, I thought, and I thanked God for that. Malcolm continued. "Mr. Gonzalez's updated healthcare directive requires direct consent whenever medically possible. It also requires independent capacity evaluation before any long-term placement can be considered." Paula nodded. "That aligns with our pause on the Pine Ridge transfer." "Transfer?" I said, letting the word sit. Brenda flinched. Malcolm turned another page. "Brenda Sutton has also been removed as executor of Mr. Gonzalez's estate." Travis finally straightened. "Wait a second." Malcolm looked at him. "You have no authority in this room." Travis laughed once, short and ugly. "I'm her husband. And not my client's agent, not his healthcare proxy, not his executor, not his trustee, and not authorized to discuss his house, his discharge, or his personal property." Nobody spoke. That was the cleanest sentence I had heard in days. Malcolm slid another document from the folder. "This is the Home Protection Directive signed and notarized before surgery. No sale, listing, transfer, estate cleanout, donation pickup, or removal of personal property from Mr. Gonzalez's residence is authorized without his direct written consent." Brenda looked toward the window. Travis looked at the floor. That told me plenty. I thought of Isabel's chair pulled away from the window, my shirts in trash bags, Cody holding her silver pen like a child rescuing a match from a flood. "My wife's belongings were touched," I said. My voice was calm. Too calm, maybe. Brenda wiped at one eye. "I was trying to make space for medical equipment." "Then why was there a box labeled clear before listing?" She did not answer. Malcolm placed one more page on top of the stack. Conditional inheritance terms were also updated. That phrase finally cracked Travis's silence. "This is punishment." I looked at him. "No. Punishment is what you thought you could do to my life while I could not stand up." His mouth tightened. Brenda covered her face with one hand. For the first time, I saw her not as a villain, but as something messier. A tired daughter, a frightened woman, a person in debt, maybe, or pressure, or shame, trying to use control as a substitute for courage. But understanding pain does not erase harm. Malcolm tapped the folder gently. "Mrs. Sutton, no nursing home placement may proceed under your authority. No discharge plan may bypass Mr. Gonzalez's direct participation. No representative may present him as lacking capacity without medical documentation supporting that claim." And Jocelyn added, "And my chart reflects that he has been oriented and able to answer appropriately." Paula looked at Brenda with professional sadness. "We can discuss short-term recovery support, home health, equipment, outpatient rehab, or temporary facility care if Mr. Gonzalez consents. But this packet cannot move forward as written." Pine Ridge, the suitcase, the form. The machinery stopped turning for one blessed second. I closed my eyes. Not from relief, exactly. Relief is too clean a word. This was more like getting one breath after being held underwater by people who kept saying they were helping you swim. Brenda came closer to the bed. Her face was wet now. "I was scared," she said. "I know." "You don't know what it's like to think your parent might fall and nobody will find him." "I know fear." "No, Dad, you don't know mine." Maybe she was right. Maybe a child's fear of becoming responsible for an aging parent has its own weight. But then I thought of Maya's trembling voice. "Grandpa, they're emptying your room." And I thought of Brenda in the hallway. "He won't need his house now." I opened my eyes. "Fear should have brought you to my bedside," I said, "not into my bedroom with boxes." That broke her. She sat down hard in the chair beside the wall. For a while, only the monitor spoke. Then my phone buzzed. Maya. Malcolm picked it up from the table and glanced at me for permission. I nodded. He opened the video she sent. The screen showed my living room. Travis's voice came through first. "Once he transitions, we can get this place listed fast." Then another man's voice. "Has Mr. Gonzalez approved pre-listing photos?" Travis laughed softly. "He won't fight it once Brenda gets him settled." The video ended. No one moved. Travis's face went gray. Brenda looked at him like she had just heard the inside of their plan spoken without the softer words. I looked at Malcolm. He closed the phone gently. The room felt colder now, because this was no longer just about Brenda being scared. This was about my absence being discussed like a project timeline. I looked at my daughter. "I thought you wanted me somewhere safe." She could barely answer. "I did." "Then why is your husband selling my absence before I've even left the hospital?" She had no answer, and that was the worst answer of all. Malcolm gathered the documents back into the blue folder. "Ali," he said quietly, "we need to prepare for tomorrow's discharge meeting." I stared at the phone where Travis's voice had just played. The pain in my hip was still there. The hospital wristband still cut into my skin. But something else had changed. I was not trapped inside their plan anymore. Now they were trapped inside the truth. I looked at Brenda, then at Travis, then at the blue folder Isabel's silver pen had made possible. And I finally understood what my wife had really left me. Not paperwork. A voice that could still speak when my body was too weak to stand. That night, the hospital room felt colder. Not because the air changed, because the truth did. Pain medication made the edges of things blur sometimes. The monitor lights softened. Hallway sounds stretched strangely. A man in his 70s, lying in a hospital bed after surgery, can begin to feel less like a person and more like luggage waiting for instructions. But grief sharpens certain details. I remembered every single thing Maya sent me. Every box, every label, every inch Isabel's chair had been moved away from the window. Jocelyn came in around 9 to check my incision and help me stand with the walker for the first time. My body hated the idea immediately. The moment I pushed weight onto my leg, heat shot through my hip and down my spine so hard I almost sat back down. "You're doing fine," Jocelyn said. "No," I muttered through my teeth. "I'm surviving politely." That earned a small laugh from her. Good nurses know older men sometimes need dignity more than encouragement. I took 3 slow steps, then 4. The walker rattled softly across the hospital floor, while my hospital wristband scratched against my skin every time I tightened my grip. By the time I sat back down, sweat covered the back of my neck. Jocelyn handed me water. "You'll get stronger," she said. I looked toward the dark hospital window. "I need to get home before they erase me." Her face changed slightly at that. Not confusion, recognition. She understood exactly what I meant. After she left, Maya arrived carrying a small paper bag against her chest. She looked exhausted, eyes red, hair tied back carelessly. 19 years old and already carrying more emotional weight than some people carry by 50. "Grandpa," she whispered. I opened my arms carefully, and she leaned down to hug me without touching my hip. That nearly broke me by itself. Young people who learn how to hug around pain too early lose something invisible. She handed me the paper bag. Inside was Isabel's silver pen. For a second, I could not breathe right. The pen still had the tiny scratch near the clip from the day Isabel dropped it on the library parking lot years ago. I used to tease her that she guarded legal papers more carefully than jewelry. Maya sat beside the bed. "Cody wouldn't let Mom take it," she said quietly. "He hid it in his backpack." I closed my hand around the pen. That little boy understood respect better than half the adults in my family. Maya unlocked her phone. "There's more." I was not ready, but she showed me anyway. The first photo stopped me cold. My bed, sheets removed, mattress half exposed, like someone preparing a room for a stranger. The second photo showed boxes stacked against the hallway wall. Donate, storage, keep for Brenda. The third photo hurt worst of all. Isabel's reading chair had been pushed into the garage beside old paint cans and a folded ladder. The blanket she used during winter still hung over one arm, like she had just stood up and nobody bothered to notice she mattered. Maya's voice trembled. "Mom said the house needed to feel less crowded." Crowded. That word almost made me laugh. A dead woman's chair was crowding them, not greed, not pressure, not impatience. The chair. I looked down at Isabel's silver pen resting in my hand. Then Maya showed me another photo, a medium-sized suitcase sitting near the front door, a luggage tag attached to the handle. Pine Ridge. Something inside me folded quietly, not snapped, not exploded, folded. People think betrayal always arrives like thunder. Sometimes it arrives like tape sealing a suitcase while you are still alive to hear it. Maya wiped at her eyes. "I tried to stop them." "I know. Mom said she was preparing for possibilities." I stared at the suitcase photo. "No," I said softly. "She was preparing for my absence." Silence filled the room after that. Only the monitor kept talking. Beep, beep, beep. Like time itself was documenting the conversation. Then Maya swallowed hard and showed me a short video. Travis was standing in my bedroom doorway talking to someone off camera. I could not see the other person clearly, but I heard a man's voice asking, "How quickly do you think the family wants movement after transition?" Transition. Again, always transition. Never removal. Never displacement. Never abandonment. Travis answered calmly. "Brenda thinks once he settles into care, the emotional part gets easier." The emotional part. That was apparently me now. A difficult emotional part standing between people and cleaner carpet lines. I shut my eyes, and for the first time since surgery, I felt truly old. Not weak, old. There is a difference. Weakness can heal. But there is a moment when an older person realizes the world has begun discussing them as a future inconvenience instead of a living presence. That realization ages you faster than surgery ever could. I opened my eyes again and looked at Maya. "Does your mother know you're here?" "She thinks I'm getting coffee." I nodded slowly. Then I noticed something else in one of the photos. A cardboard box near the hallway table. Clear. Before listing. Those 3 words sat heavier than any legal document Malcolm had shown me. Because legal documents can be challenged, but labels tell the truth people accidentally reveal to themselves. My phone rang suddenly. Unknown number. Maya frowned. "Should I answer?" I nodded. She pressed speaker. A man spoke immediately. "Mr. Gonzalez, this is Glenn Porter with Northwest Realty. I'm just confirming tomorrow's pre-listing walkthrough." The room went completely still. I felt Maya turn toward me. My grip tightened around Isabel's pen. "I think you have the wrong number," I said carefully. A pause. Then papers shuffled faintly on his end. "I was told by your daughter and son-in-law that the property owner would likely be transitioning into long-term care after surgery." There it was. Not fear, not concern. A timeline, my house, my life, my recovery. All turned into scheduling language before I had even learned how to walk with the damn walker. "What property owner?" I asked. Another pause. Then Glenn answered carefully. "Your home, sir." Maya covered her mouth. I stared at the dark hospital window, seeing nothing in it except reflection. A man in a hospital gown, a wristband, a walker beside the bed, and a family already measuring the empty space he was supposed to leave behind. I spoke very quietly after that. "Who told you I wasn't coming home?" Glenn hesitated too long. Then finally, "Your daughter and her husband said it would be easier to move quickly before the market changed." The call ended soon after, but the silence it left behind stayed in the room. Maya started crying softly. I did not. I think part of me had moved beyond tears by then. I looked again at the suitcase labeled Pine Ridge, at the box marked Clear before listing, at Isabel's chair abandoned in the garage. Then I looked down at her silver pen in my hand, and I realized something terrible. My daughter had not just prepared for me to recover somewhere else, she had already started preparing the house to recover from me. The discharge meeting was scheduled for 10 in the morning. By 8:30, I already knew nobody in that room would leave unchanged. Pain medication had worn off enough for my thoughts to sharpen again. My hips still felt heavy and unstable, but my mind was clear now. Clear enough to see the shape of what had really happened. Not panic, planning. That was the part that hurt most. Families sometimes say terrible things during stress. People lose patience. They speak harshly. They make mistakes. But this had a timeline, a sequence, a strategy built before I even woke up. Malcolm arrived early carrying the blue folder and a legal pad covered in notes. Maya came with him. She looked exhausted again, but steadier now. Cody stayed home with a neighbor because nobody wanted him hearing what adults become when money and fear start sharing a room. Brenda and Travis arrived 10 minutes later. They did not walk in together. That told me plenty before a single word was spoken. Brenda looked pale. Travis looked irritated. People reveal themselves in crisis. One becomes frightened. The other becomes annoyed. The plan is slowing down. Paula Hensley entered with a hospital administrator named Vera Langley. Jocelyn stood near the wall holding my chart. Malcolm sat beside my bed like a man preparing for weather he already expected. Nobody smiled. Vera opened the meeting carefully. "We're here to clarify discharge planning and concerns regarding consent, placement authority, and home readiness." Home readiness. Another clean phrase hiding a dirty possibility. Malcolm nodded toward me. "My client would like direct answers regarding actions taken while he was under anesthesia." Brenda immediately folded her arms. "Dad keeps making this sound criminal." I looked at her. "You started emptying my bedroom before I could walk." Her eyes watered instantly. "That used to destroy me. Not anymore. Pain can become manipulation if you let it arrive every time accountability enters the room." Vera adjusted her glasses. "Mrs. Sutton, were any long-term arrangements initiated before Mr. Gonzalez regained capacity?" Brenda hesitated. Too long. Travis jumped in instead. "We were trying to stay ahead of reality." Malcolm leaned back slightly. "And what reality was that?" "That he can't live alone anymore." The room stayed quiet after that, because underneath the sentence sat another one nobody wanted to say aloud. So we decided for him. Malcolm opened the folder. "We also have concerns regarding unauthorized property preparation." Travis laughed softly. "Oh, come on." Maya slid her phone across the table. The photos appeared one after another. My stripped bed, the donation boxes, the garage, Isabel's chair beside paint cans, then the suitcase, Pine Ridge. Brenda closed her eyes. Vera looked disturbed now. Paula, too. But Jocelyn did not look surprised. She had probably seen families do this before. Maybe not exactly this, but enough versions of it. Travis leaned forward. "You're twisting everything." Maya's voice shook. "No, you did." Everyone looked at her. She swallowed hard but kept going. "You started packing before Grandpa woke up." Brenda whispered, "Maya." "No, Mom." That word cracked in half inside the room. Not disrespectful, heartbroken. "You told me we were helping him," Maya said, "but you already had labels on boxes." Travis rubbed his forehead. "This is getting emotional." I almost laughed. A man discussing my removal from my own home, complaining about emotion. Vera turned toward him sharply. "Sir, was there contact with a realtor before discharge planning was finalized?" Nobody answered. Malcolm slid printed screenshots onto the table. Glenn Porter's call logs, pre-listing appointment confirmation, estimated sale notes, projected market value, approximately $615,000. My house reduced to numbers before my surgical staples had even settled. Brenda looked physically ill now. Travis finally snapped. "We were trying to protect assets." There it was. The truth rarely enters politely. Paula frowned. Protect from what? Medical debt, long-term care costs, probate delays, taxes. Travis gestured toward me like I was proof of his argument. "Do you know what nursing care costs in 2026? Do you know what happens when families wait too long?" I listened carefully then, because for the first time, somebody stopped pretending this was entirely about safety. Fear had entered the room honestly. Fear of debt, fear of decline, fear of watching an old parent become financially and physically fragile while the economy squeezes everybody alive. Part of me even understood it. That was the tragedy. If Travis had come to me honestly, maybe we could have talked. But greed always wants shortcuts, and shortcuts require silence. Malcolm spoke calmly. "Then explain the long-term placement review initiated before Mr. Gonzalez regained consciousness." Travis looked toward Brenda. Wrong move, because now everybody knew she had not led this alone. Vera looked down at the paperwork. "There's also concern regarding notation requests." My chest tightened slightly. "What notation requests?" Jocelyn answered this time. "Someone requested repeated observation entries regarding confusion and orientation." The room froze. I looked directly at Brenda. Her lips parted. "It wasn't like that." "What was it like?" She began crying then. Real crying. Not strategic tears. The kind that arrive when somebody finally hears their own actions spoken out loud. "I was scared," she whispered. "After Mom died, everything felt like it was falling on me." Nobody interrupted her, not even Malcolm. "My job barely covers bills anymore," she said. "Insurance costs keep rising. Travis's store cut commissions again. Maya's tuition, Cody's asthma medication, the mortgage on our own house." She covered her face. "And then Dad needed surgery, and everybody kept saying recovery complications happen all the time." I listened quietly. Because this part mattered too. Villains who believe themselves evil are rare. Most people hurt others while convincing themselves they are surviving. Brenda looked at me through tears. "I thought if we moved quickly, we could control the situation before something worse happened." I asked softly, "Control for who?" That question destroyed what little remained of the illusion. She had no answer. Travis stood abruptly. "You're all acting like we tried to kill him." "No," Malcolm said. "You tried to erase his authority before he could object." Silence, cold and complete. Then Maya opened another video. I had not seen this one yet. The footage showed Travis in my living room 2 days before surgery. Brenda stood beside him holding paperwork. Travis pointed toward the hallway. "Once he's placed, we clear this room first. Easier for staging." Brenda's voice came quietly from the video. "Dad will hate this." Travis answered immediately. "He'll adjust." The video ended. Nobody moved. I stared at my daughter, not at Travis anymore, at her. Because that sentence mattered more than all the paperwork combined. Dad will hate this. Meaning she already knew, already understood, already felt the betrayal before signing it anyway. That hurt deeper than the nursing home packet ever could. Vera finally closed the folder in front of her. "I'm documenting concerns regarding attempted placement escalation, premature property transition planning, and disputed consent." Disputed consent. Such clean words for such ugly behavior. Malcolm looked toward me. "Allie, would you like your updated directives formally acknowledged now?" I nodded. My voice stayed calm. Yes. Malcolm opened the blue folder one final time. The silver pen rested inside beside the documents. Isabel's pen. Still protecting me after death. Effective immediately, Malcolm said. Brenda Sutton holds no medical authority, no estate authority, and no housing authority regarding Ali Gonzalez. Brenda broke completely then. Not loud. Worse. Quiet crying. The kind that sounds like somebody realizing consequences are finally real. Travis looked furious. But fear had reached him too now, because the house, the placement, the paperwork, the timeline, all of it had collapsed in public. I leaned back slowly against the hospital pillow. My hip ached. My chest ached worse. Because despite everything, I still loved my daughter. That is the terrible thing about family. Love does not disappear just because trust does. Then Malcolm said one more sentence that changed the room again. There is also the matter of the conditional inheritance clause Mr. Gonzalez added before surgery. Brenda lifted her head sharply. Travis stopped moving. And for the first time that morning, both of them looked truly afraid. Nobody spoke after Malcolm mentioned the conditional inheritance clause. Not immediately. Fear changes the temperature of a room faster than anger ever can. Brenda stared at the blue folder like it had suddenly become something alive. Travis stood near the wall with his jaw tight, but I noticed his confidence had finally cracked. Men like him survive by controlling momentum. Once momentum turns against them, they start looking smaller inside their own clothes. Malcolm adjusted his glasses and opened the final section of the documents. Before surgery, he said calmly, Ali Gonzalez added a dignity protection clause tied to all future inheritance distributions and housing authority. Brenda's voice barely came out. What does that mean? Malcolm looked directly at her. It means any family member who attempts to remove Mr. Gonzalez from his home through coercion, false incapacity claims, pressured placement, or unauthorized property transition may lose all administrative and financial privileges connected to the estate. Travis scoffed softly. That sounds ridiculous. No, Malcolm replied. It sounds specific. The room went quiet again. Paula lowered her eyes toward the paperwork. Vera sat completely still. Jocelyn remained near the wall holding my chart against her chest like she already knew this meeting would follow her home tonight. I looked at Brenda. I did not create that clause because I stopped loving you. Tears rolled down her face immediately. I created it because your mother saw this kind of thing happen to older people all the time. Isabel used to come home from the library furious sometimes. Not loud furious. Worse, quiet furious. She would stand at the kitchen counter, stirring tea, and tell me about widowers tricked into signing refinance documents. Women placed into facilities while sedated. Elderly men convinced to surrender homes because their families called independence selfish. Then she would tap that silver pen against the table and say, "One frightened signature can erase an entire life." At the time, I thought she was preparing strangers for danger. I never imagined she was preparing me. Malcolm continued. The clause also freezes any property transition connected to the residence for 24 months, unless approved directly by Mr. Gonzalez. Travis pushed away from the wall. So what? He lives there alone forever? I answered before Malcolm could. I live there until I decide otherwise. My voice surprised even me. Not angry. Certain. That certainty unsettled Travis more than shouting would have. He pointed toward me. You're acting like we wanted you dead. Maya looked at him sharply. No, she said quietly. You just wanted him gone early. That sentence hit the room harder than anything else that morning, because it was true. Not murder, not violence. Something colder, administrative disappearance. A nursing home packet. A realtor call, boxes, labels, a suitcase. All built around the assumption that an old man recovering from surgery would become easier to manage once his voice weakened. Vera finally spoke again. Based on the evidence provided, the hospital is canceling any transfer discussions connected to Pine Ridge Care Center, pending further review. Travis threw up his hands. This is unbelievable. No, Jocelyn said softly, for the first time in several minutes. It's documented. I will never forget that moment. Not because it was dramatic, because it was small, simple. A nurse standing quietly in a hospital room reminding everyone that truth becomes dangerous once someone writes it down carefully. Brenda looked completely exhausted now, not defeated yet, but collapsing inward. She turned toward me slowly. Dad, I was trying to keep everything from falling apart. I studied her face, the dark circles under her eyes, the trembling mouth, the shame finally pushing through the defensiveness. And for one terrible second, I saw not the woman who packed my bedroom, but the little girl who used to sleep beside the hallway heater during winter storms because she thought the sound made the house feel safer. Love is cruel that way. It keeps showing you old versions of people long after newer versions hurt you. I spoke carefully. You did not trust me enough to tell me the truth. She covered her mouth and cried harder. Travis stepped toward her immediately. Brenda, stop apologizing. That was the moment I finally understood him fully. He did not fear hurting me. He feared losing control of the story. Malcolm closed the blue folder. There's one more matter. Nobody moved. The revised estate documents permanently removed Travis Sutton from any advisory role connected to the Gonzalez estate, property, healthcare planning, or future trust discussions. Travis laughed once, a hard, humorless sound. You can't seriously be doing this because of one misunderstanding. One misunderstanding, Maya repeated. She pulled out her phone again. Another video. I had not seen this one either. The screen showed my garage 2 nights before surgery. Travis stood beside the realtor, Glenn Porter. You think we can get 615 if we move fast? Travis asked. Glenn answered carefully. Maybe higher if the market stays stable. Then Travis said the sentence that finished him. Once Ali's settled into care, the emotional resistance disappears. The video ended. Nobody breathed for a second. Brenda stared at her husband like she had finally heard the part he hid even from her. Not concern, convenience. I leaned back slowly against the hospital pillow. Pain spread through my hip again, deep and burning. But the pain inside my chest felt older, heavier, because this was no longer about paperwork or placement. It was about discovering exactly how easily your absence can become part of someone else's financial planning. Malcolm stood. I'll finalize discharge arrangements for home recovery. Paula nodded. We can arrange physical therapy, home health visits, temporary mobility equipment, and outpatient follow-up. Home. That word sounded fragile now, not because I feared returning there, because I knew the house would not feel the same after seeing those labels, clear before listing. I doubted I would ever walk past a cardboard box again without remembering that phrase. Brenda wiped her eyes and looked toward me one last time. What happens now? Such a human question. Not legal, not strategic, just human. I answered honestly. Now you live with what you chose. She broke again after that. Maya turned away, crying quietly. Even Vera looked uncomfortable. Jocelyn stared down at the chart because nurses learn early that some grief deserves privacy. Travis reached for Brenda's shoulder. She moved away from Charmaine. That surprised him more than the legal documents had, because for the first time, she was no longer standing inside his version of reality. She was standing inside mine. The discharge meeting ended slowly after that. Paperwork, signatures, instructions, medication schedules. Normal hospital things continuing around a family falling apart one sentence at a time. Before leaving, Malcolm placed Isabel's silver pen beside my hand. Your wife saved you, he said quietly. I looked at the pen for a long moment. No, I whispered. She taught me to save myself. Later that evening, Maya helped me stand again with the walker. Every movement hurt. But this time, I stayed upright longer. 3 steps, then 5, then 7. Outside my hospital window, Spokane was turning dark under cold spring rain. Cars moved through wet streets. People hurried home carrying groceries and stress and ordinary life. Somewhere across town, my house was waiting. Still mine. Still carrying Isabel's books, her chair, her scent trapped faintly in old blankets and hallway air. But now another truth waited there too. Because when Malcolm reviewed the final property files before discharge, he found evidence that the realtor visit had not been the beginning of the plan. It had started weeks earlier, before my surgery was even scheduled. I went home 12 days after surgery, not to a nursing home, not to Pine Ridge. Home. Malcolm arranged physical therapy visits twice a week. Maya stayed the first weekend to help with groceries and medication schedules. Cody carried my walker into the living room like he was helping move treasure instead of medical equipment. And when I finally stepped through my own front door again, I stopped breathing for a second, because the house still smelled like Isabel. Coffee, old paper, lavender hand cream, a little dust in the hallway sunlight. Some people will understand what I mean by that, others will not. A home remembers love differently than people do. The boxes were still there. Malcolm made sure nothing else had been removed after the hospital meeting. The donation pile sat untouched near the garage. Isabel's chair had been brought back to the window by Maya and Cody before I returned. That nearly broke me. I stood there holding the walker while afternoon light touched the blanket folded across the armrest. For one dangerous second, I almost expected Isabel to look up from her book and ask why I was standing in the doorway staring like a fool. Instead, there was only silence. Older people become experts at surviving silence. A week later, Brenda came alone. No Travis. That mattered. She stood on the porch holding nothing except her purse and the face of someone who had not slept properly in a long time. I invited her inside anyway. Because anger and love can live in the same room at the same time. Families prove that every day. She looked around the living room carefully, almost ashamed to meet the eyes of the furniture. "I didn't know where else to go," she said quietly. I nodded toward the kitchen table. "The coffee still works." That made her cry immediately. Not loudly, just tired crying. The kind that arrives after pride finally loses its strength. She told me everything then. The credit card debt, the second mortgage pressure, Travis pushing harder every month, the fear after my surgery date was scheduled, the panic of imagining hospital complications while bills stacked higher and higher. Then she admitted the part that mattered most. "I started thinking about your house before your surgery," she whispered. Truth sounds smaller than lies sometimes, simpler, cleaner, more painful. I looked down at Isabel's silver pen resting near my coffee cup. "Why didn't you talk to me?" Brenda wiped her eyes. "Because I was ashamed." There it was. Not greed alone. Shame. Shame that her father still lived more carefully than she did. Shame that the house she grew up in had become the safest financial thing in her life. Shame that part of her saw my aging body and thought about stability before dignity. People hate admitting those thoughts out loud, but many families live closer to that fear than they want to confess. I told Brenda the truth too. "I still love you." She broke again after hearing that, because forgiveness hurts people differently than punishment does. I did not restore her authority. I did not change the legal protections. Travis remained removed from every medical, estate, and property discussion permanently. Malcolm finalized the updated directives 2 weeks later. The dignity clause stayed exactly where it belonged. Some damage should leave a scar, but I also refused to let bitterness become the final inheritance Isabel left behind. 3 months later, I used part of my retirement savings and a small insurance account to start the Isabel Gonzalez Elder Rights Workshop at the community library where she used to teach. Not lawyers in suits, not giant seminars, Just ordinary older people sitting at folding tables learning how to read healthcare directives, placement forms, POA documents, discharge paperwork, and housing agreements before fear or medication made decisions harder. The first session filled completely. That told me something terrible about America in 2026. Too many older people are frightened their signatures no longer belong to them. Maya volunteers there now between classes. Cody helps set up chairs. Sometimes he carries Isabel's silver pen in his backpack like a lucky coin. Brenda has not fully returned to herself yet. Healing from shame takes longer than healing from surgery. But 6 months after everything happened, she stood during one workshop and told a room full of strangers, "I used my father's surgery and fear of old age to try controlling him, because I was afraid of losing my own stability." No excuses, no softer words, just truth. I think that was the first honest thing that truly started saving our family. As for me, I still walk with a slight limp on cold mornings. I still touch the hallway wall sometimes when the hip stiffens. And every now and then, when evening sunlight hits Isabel's chair the right way, I still expect to hear pages turning. Maybe grief never leaves. Maybe it simply learns where to sit quietly. But I know this now. Growing old should never mean surrendering your dignity to people who confuse fear with authority. And love without respect eventually becomes control, wearing a softer face. Thank you for listening to my story today. Please tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is where you live right now. I truly love seeing how far these stories travel and hearing from people around the world. And if this story moved you even a little, please subscribe to Final Act Revenge. Another story is waiting for you on your screen right now. YouTube thinks you may enjoy it, and honestly, after everything we shared today, I think you might too.